All right, we'll get started. Hi, everyone. I'm Dave Guilford, the Director of Raw Endurance and also the President of FDNY Tri and Cycling Team. I just want to welcome you all tonight. This is our third week. This is, I believe it's session number 6 of our 8-session series. Tonight we're going to be discussing a wide variety of topics, kind of like a back to basics. Let's get this graphic up on screen here. About the bike. It's all about the bike tonight. Bike fit basics, bike maintenance, some basics about maintaining your machines before you go out and ride, how to change your flat tire, what's in your under the seat bike tool bag, bike handling skills. A lot of us are now transitioning from indoor trainer rides to outdoor rides. So we want to make sure that our handling skills are still pretty sharp and our machines are ready to hit the road. And from there, we will discuss special needs bags. We had a discussion last week with Ashley Gentle. She's a pro felt athlete and ITU specialist from Australia. Was able to have a nice discussion with us regarding transitions, her setup on the bike, how she runs through T1 and T2. And then from there, we're going to bring it into like the long distance tonight, which is like special needs, setting up your special needs bags. While you're out on the bike, you have that if it's like a 2-loop course, you do the 1 loop, then you grab your bag, whatever you need in there. So we'll kind of review what should go in there, as well as we'll do some, race planning and your gear checklists for when you arrive race day. So it's a little progression today. We're joined by Danielle Goggerty. She's been with us this whole time. Hi, Danielle. Say hi to everybody. She's our coach from the Rad Fam out in Long Island, New York. And then tonight also we have a special guest speaker, Chris Pulomena from Merrick Bicycles. And he's going to review some bike fit basics and some bike maintenance. So without further ado, let me just get that down so I can see everybody. All right, cool. You're back. So let's talk about, I guess, bike fit. Danielle, you want to start us off with some bike fit basics? You've had your bike fit done by Chris over at Merrick. You want to maybe tell us about that experience? What people, should be thinking about before they get their bike? Because you should probably get a bike fit maybe before you get a bike to see what size frame is good for you. And then once you do get your bike, how often you need a bike fit when you get your new bike. And then you ride for a couple of weeks, you need to get kind of settled in because you've gotten used to it. So maybe just talk about your experience with bike fit, and then we could head over to Chris and he could get into a little bit more specifics.
Sure. Yeah. Hi, everybody. Thanks again for tuning in for the third week. This is an interesting topic because in triathlon, it's where you spend the most of your time is on the bicycle. No matter the distance of the race, it's the longest duration. So with that, you probably want to be the most comfortable you should be on that piece of equipment. So a bike fit is something that can be costly, but it's worth every penny because the comfort and the prevention of injury and the ability to have the most ease as you ride, so making you the most efficient cyclist, is all part of what fitting on your bicycle means. So once you choose your bicycle, and hopefully you'll work with a bike shop and someone who's really knowledgeable about each model, what would fit your body type, what would be the best ride for you, then you will schedule an appointment and you have to allow yourself probably 3 or 4 hours for a proper bike fit. And that is because of the science of the bicycle, which I'm still learning at this point, 10 years into the sport, because everything changes every year. There's new things, new gear, new stuff. And just, you become a different athlete as you learn to ride the bike. It's not an easy discipline by any means. And it takes a long time to get good at it. people are always saying like, I want to be fast on the bike. I want to ride more than 13 miles per hour. And it takes years and years and years to become a really good cyclist. And a lot of that has to do with bicycle you're riding and how it fits. So even, for example, I had bought my third triathlon bike this past winter with Chris and the guys at Merrick. And it is a progression. I started with a Trek bike as my first bike, and I bought it used, probably like most everybody does, because it's the inexpensive way to start the sport. And then I was fitted on a Cervelo. I'm a Cervelo chick. So I had a Cervelo tri-bike, and I rode it for, Chris, you would know better than me. I think it was 4 seasons. I think 4 seasons on the P2, right?
You and I got our Cervelos around the same time. It was like 2015, 16.
Yeah. And then I just recently, made some upgrades for my fit, and we fit me a little bit more aggressive because, as I explained, you become a stronger cyclist and you become a better athlete as you spend more time in each discipline. So I was able to make some changes to still continue to help me get faster and stronger on the bike. So I have also a lot of nagging injuries that need to be catered to, hip, knee, ankle, foot, and those are all the angles and the things that are measured and felt when you are getting your bicycle fit. Chris will explain all the science and the technology and the terminology behind that, but basically we'll measure all of your inseam and your leg lengths and your back and all kinds of things, your arms and all types of different positioning. And you'll spend a few hours just cycling and seeing where everything kind of gels. Then you'll take your bike home and you'll ride it on the trainer, hopefully for a little while, and see how it feels. I had to get used to mine. I had, like I said, a new fit. So I was put in a different position on the bike that my whole body had to readjust to. And then you can go back for a refit where we can make any like little tweaks. If something was aching or something was strained or something was just not right, you make those changes. So it's a really good investment and it will last you, you should probably check it out every season, really. Try to take it in when you bring it for a tune-up to see if you need to have any changes made. And that's all personal preference, how long you can get away with riding your bike for without feeling hurt or like you need to change something. So I would suggest that we talk about bike fit first, and then we can go into caring for your bike because it is a very expensive piece of equipment. You want to make it last a long time. You want to take care of it. No rusty chains, dirty chains. Chris will get very mad at you if it's too stretched out. There's so many components to the bike, and keeping it and maintaining it. The word bike maintenance is a term for a reason. It's a lot of work. Pedals and power meters and all the things that hook up to your bicycle too are all things that also need to be taken care of. So I think, maintenance is important. Also knowing what tools to carry with you while you're on the course. If you're out riding in a group ride and you drop a chain or you have a flat, what do? A lot of people I know don't know how to change tires. I don't do it very well myself. It's a very time-consuming thing for me. Changing a tube inside the tire is not my forte. I leave that for my husband to take care of my bike for me. Mainly I have to remember to charge my bike and just know how to ride it. That's how I leave the house. Charge your bike and get on it.
That's an important thing too now with the electronic shifting. You got to make sure your bike is charged.
You have to remember to charge your bike if you're with the electronic shifters. So that's a whole other added thing to like write down in my to-do list the night before. Make sure you charge your bike. So there's a whole lot of things that you would need to carry with you on the road for a training ride and also with you for race day, because you don't always have the option of somebody driving by in a golf cart to help you, fix a flat. So you should know how to do these things on your own. And in a perfect non-COVID world, we do run, clinics like that. We'll get together in the bike shop and we've done this. We've learned how to clean our bicycles. We've learned how to take care of the tires and the wheels and all that stuff, and how to store it when you're not using it, temperatures, on and off the trainer so you don't break anything. So you know, it's a lot of care. You have to take care of it. I think my bicycle is worth more than my car at this point in time. So, you know, nobody touches it. The kids aren't allowed to climb on it. They're not even allowed to look at it.
It's like artwork. I keep mine hanging on the wall. It's like artwork. Yeah.
Yes, it is. You know, when you know, you know. So, I mean, I could go on and on about what I carry on my bike or what I have with me and things you check and double check. But really, it means so much more when it comes from Chris, who deals with what we don't do right all the time. So you probably could tell us when somebody brings in their bike for just say a tune-up and you're like, this thing is a disaster. Like, what do you see and what could you tell us about what not to do and what to do?
Firstly, that was a really good, really eloquent description of the bike fit. I was very impressed. You've gone through it a few times though, so I should have expected that. The most common thing I think I see a lot is people who probably don't change their rubber as frequently as they should, and people who probably don't change their chain as frequently as they should. That being said, lubrication and cleaning of the chain will serve you so much. Like, keeping your chain clean will make it last literally hundreds of miles more. Those are two big ones, and you know, not super costly ones that could save you a lot of time and stress out on the road. I would definitely recommend, I mean, depending on your training load, and you know, the intensity of your intervals and your erg mode and what you're doing. I mean, I change my chain between 2,000 and 3,000 miles. And if you're doing 5,000 miles a year, you know, that might be 2 chains a year. You can certainly stretch the life out longer though if you properly clean and lubricate your drivetrain. That's like a big one that we see a lot.
Chris, I have a question. So how do you know if your chain, I guess, is too loose? I mean, if you kind of go by your front crank, kind of pull it off a little bit.
You can. That's like a really easy way to do it at home. We have, you know, I'm fortunate to have a wall of tools, and there's actually chain checkers. That's not a very expensive tool that, you know, you can invest in just to have one at home.
Right.
That would be, I mean, that's like an old school, right? If you can pull it off and
Pull it off a little bit.
teeth, you know, it's probably time to go. But if you run it, if you can run into your bike shop, and it's hard to get into them now,
Sure.
but under normal circumstances, any mechanic will be able, or any salesperson even could show you and check your chain. I would be happy to, if you came to the store, like, hey, this chain might be, you know, 2,000 miles old. Like, can you just look at it? It takes 2 seconds. Or purchase a chain checker. It's probably under a $20 investment.
And so if your chain is a little bit stretched out, which I guess the links, a little give and stuff, your gearing and your shifting is not going to be as smooth. Is that right?
It's gonna affect shifting. You know, it's not gonna feel good. But what's worse is if you are riding, you know, your drivetrain is a system, right? You have your front chain ring, your chain, your rear cassette. And typically, if you're riding a worn chain on that cassette, what you're going to do is wear down the cassette at a faster rate. So then you're going to wind up having to change both your cassette and your chain rather than just. And a cassette for an Ultegra is probably somewhere around $80 to $85, right? So it, you know, proper chain maintenance will also save you money on cassettes.
Got it. Okay. Perfect. So from the chain, let's stick with the maintenance. So just, you want to clean that chain after your rides. You don't really want to lube it before you go out, because if you lube it, then it's going to all, like, the dirt and the grime is going to stick to it, right? So you want to save that for after your ride. Is that right?
You hit the nail on the head. And a lot of people love to just throw the lube on right before they roll out and go. And in an ideal world, I mean, before I put my bike and I don't have a bike rack right now. Before I put the bike back in the back of the car, I have a washcloth. Sometimes I use an old T-shirt, old sock might be in the back of the car, and I put some lube in the sock and just run the chain through that, and get whatever dirt, grime, road grit that you've accumulated on that ride off before it has a chance to kind of like settle in.
Right.
And then you just put a little bit of lubricant on the chain and it's ready to roll for the next time.
Perfect. And then also with the T-shirt, I usually, take the side of the T-shirt, kind of like floss in between cassette. You want to go one by one, get in there and, really work out whatever is in there, get all that grime out of there, because that's going to affect your shifting.
Yes, that can be huge. And if you don't have the means to take the cassette off the wheel, what I'll do is I'll actually pull the wheel off and kind of stand with the wheel between like the wall or the counter and myself and just prop it up so it's, the cassette is kind of parallel to the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Just the rag through it.
Yeah.
With the, whatever it is, a washcloth T-shirt, whatever you got.
That works. No, that's perfect. And that all affects your shifting out on the road. So if your machine isn't, well taken care of, it's going to affect you. The other thing is, don't wait until, the day before your race to do all of these things. So I guess early in the week you want to do it, or I would say the week before you want to, address all these things. Take your bike out for another couple of rides. Make sure it's good, because you don't want to go from the bike shop to the race course. Nothing against, all the bike mechanics out there, but, you want to ride your bike a couple times, after it's been to the shop or after you do your own, mechanical, tune-ups to see how it reacted to that, because maybe something is still off. You always see the long line, down in the transition area. Everyone's like, oh, something's wrong, and the bike shop is there, which is great to have that support. But so go to your bike shop. Yeah, we urge you to go to your bike shop or do your tune-ups on your own. Get back out, right? That's beneficial.
Fantastic advice. Like 2 weeks out, take it in, because it might take a couple days to get back. Ride it at least once or twice within the week before. Definitely don't take it, I realize things happen and sometimes you take it the week of. And
sure, everyone's schedules are busy and stuff, but
definitely the earlier the better.
All right, good. And also with that said, so let's just hop right into changing your tire. I mean, practice, right? Home, sitting around, change your tire, take it off, go through the motions. Don't rely on someone else. I mean, I was at the Rev 3, Quasi a couple of years ago as a spectator, and I watched this guy sit on the side of the road for about 15 minutes. 15 minutes just sitting there. He either didn't have the tools or he didn't know what to do, and he was at the mercy of the SAG vehicle, which, you want to be self-reliant, and especially now with COVID. I mean, Ironman is pushing the self-reliance. You got to take care of yourself even more so. So know what to do. That tire, and don't wait. Just it's punctured. Just get to it, take it off, get to work. Remain calm, because you're all kind of pumped up. Your emotions are pretty high. You're in the middle of the race and you're probably upset about a nice kind of flat tire. Just stay focused, stay calm. Maybe you could just quickly through the steps. Like step 1, release your wheel. Go for it.
And definitely, the more you can do before SAG gets there, the better. I do a lot of SAG, especially on the local, the Mighty Montauk and stuff. I do drive the course. And if you are good at changing a flat, I will say, like, you can get the time so far down. Like, I can change a flat on the road in under 2 minutes. And in an Ironman, that's not going to cost, it's not costing you 15, 20, half an hour. So I get a flat on the road. Step 1, I'm putting the bike into the highest gear in the back and the little ring in the front. I'm doing that so that allows the most slack in the chain. If it's the rear wheel, let's say, the front wheel, everyone, you know, kind of, I guess it's a little easier. The rear people tend to have a little problem with. So put the chain in that 11 tooth, and then if you're on a road bike, it's really easy to turn the bike over and kind of rest it on the seat and the handlebars. Be careful to not scratch your Garmin or Wahoo screen. If you're on a TT bike, that's a little more of a challenge. You might have to lay the bike on its side. You know, you get the wheel out, tire lever. I hope you guys know what this thing is. You guys have seen this, used this before. Should take just one of these. You get it underneath the tire. You pry the tire off. You don't need to take the tire completely off. Just take one side off. You'll be able to slide the tube out. Something I like to do is pump the tube back up, because it will allow you to see where the hole is, and then you can chase that in the tire. So if I pull the tube out and I see that 3 inches away from the valve I have a hole, I know to look in my tire 3 inches away from the valve. I'm going to find a piece of glass, a thorn or something, whatever. So that's a little tip. If you put air back in the tube and inflate it, it's easier to find where the hole is, because you'd hate to put a new tube in, roll 30 feet down the road and get it flat again. Mm-hmm. Also, definitely put a little bit of air in the tube before you try to put it back in the tire, the new tube. You know, you can blow in it if you have a Presta valve, and honestly, you'd be able to just blow into this and give it enough shape that it's not going to twist, it's not going to get caught on itself. And it's really easy to then put that tube back in. Mm-hmm. Start at the valve when you're putting the bead back in the rim. Work your way around. You're probably going to need your tire lever again to finish the job, but be careful not to pinch. I'm sure a lot of us have you know, myself included, I've probably changed 15,000 flats in my life. You be careful not to, when you're putting that last bit of tire back on, it's really easy to grab that tube and cause yourself another hole. Yeah, that was my rear flat rundown.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's super important, and it's something that everyone could practice at home. Danielle, you going to say something?
Yeah, well, first of all, you know that it's going to be the rear tire that goes, because it's always the rear that ends up flat. It's never the front, posing the most difficulty or the longest time to do so. I wanted to ask you, for people that are a little bit newer, and they may not know when they're in the shop getting ready before a race or something, oh, I have to buy, you know, extra tubes. Do they know what they're buying? Do they know the size of the valve? Do they need valve extenders? Are they riding wheels? Like, could you maybe touch on some of the differences? Because someone could walk into a regular bike shop, not ask for assistance, and pull something off the rack on the wall, and it could be totally wrong for what.
Sure. Well, actually,
where, like, on their bike, could they identify these things?
So, okay, first thing is, when you get a bike, you want a couple things that go along with it. One of them being a bag. I call this a saddle bag, or an under the seat bag. Just kind of fits up under the saddle, strapped to the rails. It's anything that you would need in case of emergency, nothing that you need to access while you're riding. And in this, you should have some spare tubes. Ideally, I like to take 2 tubes in case I flat more than once. Mm-hmm. Some kind of a multi-tool, you know, hex wrench, Phillips head. Doesn't have to be anything crazy, but just anything to get you out of the pinch. Something to inflate your tubes should you get a flat. You know, I have a very basic CO2 inflator, and then I always have at least 2 cartridges with me. because I've definitely messed up and things have gone wrong with just one. On longer rides, I might actually put a hand pump in the jersey pocket just in case. And then a patch kit is a really good one. And then another thing that I didn't do until recently is tire boots. And Park Tool makes these. These are really thick stickers that go on the inside of your tire, so you got like a big slice in it on a training ride. This has saved my butt a couple of times too. And then in the tri world, it's always fun when you have a deep dish wheel, say like a popular one would be a Zip 808, and then you purchased a spare tube that only has a 48 millimeter valve. You're out on the road and you're trying to figure out how to get this valve through this rim. So quickly, let me take you, I think I can switch my camera, right? I have here my TT setup, and this has NV 7.8s on it, very deep wheels. And you need an extender on the valve, something to get it to go through this rim. This rim, very different depth than this rim. So kind of know your gear, and know if you have a deeper wheel set, you're gonna need both probably an extended valve and, you know, valve extenders. Cresta valves typically will come in a 42, 60, and an 80 millimeter length. But if you're using really deep stuff like the 7/8s or the 808s, you'll need valve extenders on top of that.
And also, I mean, just one caveat with that is if you are swapping out your wheels from race wheels to training wheels rides, make sure you adjust your, you know, you carry the correct size valve on your spare tube.
Yes.
And I said, oh, you know, I have the shorter, because I use my training wheels, but I went out with the deep, you know, head wheels, and I didn't have the appropriate size, you know, length. So just make sure that if you swap out your wheels, swap out your spare tubes as well, because that could, you know, it goes hand in hand.
Yeah. And something else too, like if you have, well, I don't know how deep the wheels are. I typically now don't even buy anything less than an 80 mil valve.
Right. Just buy it.
It'll look a little weird on the shallow rims, but it'll get you by in that.
Yeah, that's true. That's good. All right, so that's the bike bag, your flat tire. Someone asked a question. I think we kind of touched on it. What are the signs I need to clean my chain? What do I use or not use? So we said some of the signs. I mean, if you just look at your chain, it looks really grimy, greasy. It's got some like sand or like dirt, some debris. I personally like to use a t-shirt. You use like the side of a t-shirt and kind of floss, you know, into your cassette. You just put your degreaser on a hand and you know, run your crank backwards, you know, and just let it, you know, and you'll see if you use a white t-shirt, which is great. I always use a white t-shirt to see how much dirt, and you could just sit there for like hours, it feels like, and just keep on going, always going to get something off. So what don't you want to use? I don't know. Is there something you don't want to use? I mean, you could use like an old toothbrush, get in there with an old toothbrush. WD-40, is that cool to use? I mean, I use a degreaser. So yeah, so no WD-40. Chris, take it from there.
Yeah, definitely no WD-40.
Right.
You can, you know, honestly, when I put on a new chain, there's never a bad time to clean it, right? Like even if you took it out for one ride, you can wipe it down at the end of the ride. If you wipe it down at the end of every ride, you're probably never going to have to degrease it or scrub it or do any like cleaning to it. The one thing that I will say, like, so there's a lot of like aerosol degreasers that kind of spray really hard. Like there's a popular one that Finish Line makes that and it works great. It blasts this grime off of the chain and the drivetrain, but it dries everything really, really, really quickly. And if you get it into a wheel bearing or into a bottom bracket bearing and you're not careful, you can dry the grease out of those bearings. a great thing to do, but you have to be careful with those aerosol degreasers. You'd be better off doing like what you said, running the chain through degreaser. But anytime you degrease, you have to be certain that you carefully re-lubricate afterwards.
Sure. How about washing your whole bike with a hose? You want to wash it gently with a hose. You don't want to spray it because you're going to be spraying the dirt into all the little nooks and crannies. So, you want to, use a very soft cloth, because I'm kind of guilty. I use the back of a sponge and I scratched the paint on it because there was like tape on that was on there. And I was like, oh my God, I just scratched my bike. Not the new bike, thank God. So tell us briefly. You could wash your bike. Use some Dawn. A gentle cloth and a light hose pressure.
Yeah, that's ideal. Don't use a power washer. Any kind of degreaser soap. You could also use, like, they make bike wash sprays, and that's like a little bit. If you have a bike stand, it's really easy to just spray the bike down and then hit it with a rag as well. Maybe if you're in an apartment and don't have a hose or something like that, you can always just get a bike wash spray as well and a gentle rag, and don't scratch your frame. And that works really well too.
Great. So let's quickly jump over to bike fit. So now, you're in the market for a bike. You go to get your bike fit. I know we could have a whole 3-hour discussion about bike fit. Maybe we could hit on, I see my notes here, hip angle, crank arm, aero bar, aggressive positioning. Maybe we could just discuss for maybe five more minutes, and then we'll hop into special needs and the gear checklist and bike handling skills. So let's jump into bike fit, getting the appropriate size, frame, talk about hip angle, crank arm, aero bar, positioning, etc.
Sweet. So it's going to be hard for me not to go into a deep dive on this,
I know,
but
yeah.
I'm going to do my best to keep it nice and neat. One, if you can get fit before, if you don't have a bike and you can get fit beforehand, that's awesome. A lot of places, like at our shop, we have what's called a size cycle. So I can fit you completely before you even purchase a bike. And honestly, it helps us guide people to bikes that will fit them better. Not saying that you can't buy a bike first, but there are different brands that have slightly different geometries, and I may be able to find something that just works a little bit better for your body type, right? Because not everybody's built the same. I have short, stumpy legs and a long torso, and certain bikes just don't work well for me, and other bikes work great for me. So definitely consult, especially if you're purchasing an expensive triathlon bike. They don't really start at a cheap price. Consult with a fitter before you get the bike. Even if you're planning on getting something secondhand, if you weren't coming to buy something from me, I would still be happy to help you figure out the appropriate size and fit you on the bike. And then moving into the fit itself, which is a fun process, I think. I was, a fit-e before I was a fitter. I would get fit about once a year, depending on training load, and whether I was doing a lot of yoga or lifting weights. The position dramatically would change, and my comfort level would dramatically change depending on my fit. One thing that I think is super important to consider, in particular when we're talking about triathlon fitting, because the position is kind of aggressive, right? You're way more forward than you are on a traditional road setup. Your back angle is way more steep, typically. That hip angle becomes very, very important, right? And I'll actually measure maximum hip closed angle before we get you on the bike so that I know kind of how far I can push that hip closed angle. And one of the quickest ways to get, I find, more aggressive on the bike, more aerodynamic without losing a lot of comfort is playing with that crank length, because you can drastically open up the hips by putting shorter cranks on. And a lot of people go back and forth on what crank length is right, and that's a very personal thing. What I'll tell you is there's never been a scientific study that shows that 175 produces more power than 165. It doesn't exist. If you're comfortable on shorter cranks, I think shorter cranks is a really good way to eke out a little bit more aerodynamics, because, and I'm again trying not to go too deep into this. I'm going to give you an example that we talked about earlier of going from 175 to 165, because it's just such an extreme example. No, I doubt anyone's ever going to make this change, but it's just a good way to illustrate the point. The circle that your pedal makes gets dramatically smaller. And one of the main overuse injuries that people will get on the bike is a knee injury, right? So we take very special attention we pay to the knee. Once we get your knee angle established, we want to maintain that knee angle. So if our pedal circle changes from 175 and then we make it 1 centimeter shorter at 165, to maintain that very important knee angle, the saddle has to change the same amount that the crank length changes. So your saddle is going to come up a centimeter. And then at the top of the pedal stroke, your pedal is now a centimeter lower. It's further away from the saddle than it was before. So you've now created a 2 centimeter increase in the space between your saddle and the top of the pedal, which equates to degrees of hip open, right? So your knee's not coming as high, so your hip's not getting as closed. So we can then push you a little bit further and just slice through the wind a little bit quicker. And that's just like one thing that we can do in the fit, provided that you're flexible enough to handle it, and we kind of check for that ahead of time. That can dramatically improve your performance out on the course.
So that was a nice, description about how it's all set up. And then if you do have the more open your hips are, dynamics are good, but then it gives you a little bit more, room to breathe with the lungs, to eat, to drink, and you can drive the pedals harder. Is that also accurate?
Absolutely. So when I first started time trialing, it was, slam the pads as low as you can get. But I noticed for me personally, like the amount of power that dropped from my FTP, from my road position to that extreme, aggressive TT position, it was not power that I was willing to give up. I brought my pads substantially higher, and my power dips when I'm in TT, but only by a percentage point or two, and I'm way faster higher than I am lower.
So one thing, I guess, when people order a bike online, they have the option, the crank length, easy to just be in the studio. How do you mimic, that difference to see if you're using someone's bike? You're not swapping out cranks during the fit. Do you do that on your demo bike there? And you'll know, like, after this bike fit, you should be riding 165s. You should be riding 172. This is what, so you have the ability.
That's a big
on your model to swap cranks during your bike fit.
Yes.
Correct.
Typically, I have in the studio, the tri-cycle, within two, hex bolt, I can switch it from a 165, 167, 5, 170, like it'll go every size, and then even obscure sizes that no one ever sees 180 cranks. But if you want to try it, I can certainly accommodate you. Yeah, the size cycle is a great tool for that. And then, you know, we do keep a pretty good inventory. It's funny because it's hard to keep inventory in the store right now with the craziness that's happening. But yeah, we would be able to tell you, like, you know, the bike that you want to get comes with 175, but you know, we want to put 170s on it. So I would order you that bike, and then I would also order you that crank.
Got it. Okay. So that's a nice description about crank, hip angle, being comfortable. Now let's talk quickly about the cockpit. Your aero bars, you know, you want your elbows kind of resting comfortably on the pads, elbows below your shoulders. You want to limit the amount of stress in your upper trapezius and your neck. And you want your fingers and your hands to you know, be loose up front. You know, you want to hold it onto those super, super tight. And you don't want them over draped. You don't want to be super extended over your aero bars. So maybe just, you know, briefly talk about, and on the other side, you don't want to be so compact that you're like crunched up, you know. So there is that happy medium, and you'll be able to find that with a proper bike fit.
Yes, absolutely. You want something like a 90-degree angle between, you know, at the shoulder, between your arm and your torso. And typically what I like to look for when you're in the pads, I look for the back of your elbow to be in line with the front of the shoulder. Not necessarily 100% stacked, you know, like, but some of that's going to come down to personal preference.
And you are going to shift throughout the course of your ride. You know, you'll move up a little bit, move back, but overall you want your bike and your cockpit set up in this manner. And if you move up a little bit, you know, move back, because after a long bike ride, you want to just, you know, stay loose and stretch, etc.
Yeah. But another thing that you said is staying relaxed. And I think that trying to focus on keeping the hands relaxed, the neck relaxed. I mean, I've been on and off competitively cycling for, you know, since I was 11, and even to this day, I'm out on the road and I feel the shoulders coming up, right? Like, that tense out there. And I think that a lot of that's mental. You have to kind of constantly remind yourself, you know, relax.
Yeah, because you're also down and your head is up like this, you know. So used to.
Yeah, especially
and then your position, if you're coming from a road bike and you're going to a tri bike, your center of gravity is now forward, and you're now more over your front tire. And that feeling for the first time tri bike aero bar rider, uncomfortable. It takes getting used to. So if you just buy a tri bike out there, you know, stay with it. Just be aware that now you're more over your front wheel, and you need to be aware of that for, you know, handling your bicycle. And you need to transition quickly, you know, maybe not at the same time to your wing, you know, side brakes. I would always go one at a time, you know, maintain up front, come back, grab, and then if you need to sit up, then sit up. Don't think you're going to jump up all at once, you know, right away.
Solid tip.
Yeah. So I guess right there is a good segue to, I guess, bike handling skills. So Danielle, I mean, everyone's inside. We've all been riding on the trainers inside, you know, doing the Zwift rides. So now, what are some of the things that we should have been aware of inside that's going to translate to riding outside? Because now everyone has been riding outside. So what are some things we should think about while we have been inside on the trainer that's help us transition to outdoor riding now?
Sure. I think a lot of it is even what we were just talking about, those trapezius muscles. You engage them a lot when you're actually riding or racing outside. So if you're riding your bicycle all winter long in your living room or in your home gym or your garage or whatever, you're probably more relaxed on the bike than because your bike isn't moving. You're not contending with any of the elements. So the first ride outside is usually the one you come home and the next day you're pretty sore from, up in the shoulders, because you're now paying attention to traffic, other bike traffic. You're also looking, if you're going to move over, you're kind of looking over your shoulder to look behind you, whether it's, over your right, over your left, focusing where your focal point is and what you're looking at. Now you've got your helmet on, you're not riding with a helmet indoors. My personal preference is I don't watch TV when I ride my bike inside. I either throw music on or I do nothing at all, because if I were to watch TV in my living room, I'd have to really strain. I'd have to look up high off my aero bars to see my television. So not only does it make me it throws my equilibrium off, but it also puts a really big strain on my neck. So I choose not to watch television while I ride on my trainer because my TV's too high on the wall. It's not realistic riding for me. So I keep my head down and I just ride. But transitioning to the outside, like I said, the first ride out is always the more difficult one, because now you think you're so fast on your trainer and now you're dealing with wind, or you're pedaling into the wind, and that's something that's new. So you're probably subconsciously gripping your handlebars a little bit tighter, and you're clenching your shoulders, and you're closing in, your abdominals, or even tensing your lower back. So you're feeling your way through all of these new motions, and actually to feel your bike on two wheels and not stationary. It's a very different feeling, and depending on the depth of the wheels you ride with can, pick up some wind. Lots of us who ride outside here are riding over bridges, and we're riding along beach sides. So we get a lot of those elements all the time, which you cannot mimic them on the inside. So I always think, getting ready for that first ride out, you have to also make sure you have all your gear with you. I mean, people have rolled up to a group ride and forgot their helmet because you don't ride with it inside. You forget things like that, little things.
Yeah.
But yeah, the handling of the bike, the biggest thing is knowing how to stop, because you're not hitting the brakes when you're in the house. There's no need for that. So when you're riding on the road, you have almost like when you first get into the car, you have to get used to your braking system again, and that bike etiquette, also getting used to other cyclists around you, being aware of what's around you, debris in the road, signaling other riders behind you as to what's upcoming, all things you don't think about when you're have Netflix. I'm trying to think. So those are initially the first things that come to mind when people are going to get ready to go outside. I mean, I don't love outdoor cycling, and people may not like to hear that because you like to get outside, but I think just for safety, indoors is the way to go. I think it's a good ride inside, but before you race or something like that, you need to know what your bike feels like under you. So you need to ride it. You need to take it for a long ride if you're, training for Ironman and stuff. And if you're not doing your 50s and your 100s outside, you need to take it at least for one of those, to really feel your bike and what it's like to be on your bike for that long in the elements.
And also having some emergency maneuver avoidance.
Yes.
How long your reaction is, looking, don't just it's kind of like when you're driving, don't focus in front of you. Look way up ahead of you.
Yeah.
In the big picture, when you're home on your trainer, nothing's going to jump out at you. I was riding yesterday and 2 deer jumped out in front of me.
Right.
You never know what's going to happen. If a car is going to turn, the corner, or try and sneak into a driveway, come up on your left side and try and sneak in front of you, it's very possible. If someone's going to roll through a red light and make a right-hand turn. So rules of the road are important to get familiar with. You want to make sure that when we're riding outside, we are following the rules of the road. If you're riding right-hand turn lane and it's clearly marked the right-hand turn lane and you go straight, that's wrong. You need to be in the lane that goes straight. And now cars need to recognize you. Everyone hopefully can, play nice in the sandbox and cars need to be aware of the cyclists on the road. Cyclists need to be aware of the cars on the road.
Mhm.
So if you're in the right-hand turn lane and you're at a red light, I'm pretty sure technically you need to commit to that right-hand turn. You
The right-hand turn.
can't, because if you get hit by a car, it's like the car thought you were in the right-hand turn lane. Rules of the road are important. One thing you mentioned about stopping. Go ahead, Danielle.
I was going to say also, really practicing reaching for your bottles and drinking and stuff while you're on the bike. Because at home, some people set up a table next to them and they've got their water bottles sitting there waiting for them, but that's not realistic either. Do you use your right hand or left hand to reach behind you for your bottle, or to, reach on your frame for your bottle? And how do you do it? Because those are big things that, when you're newer to the sport, really takes some time in just practice and being able to do that without dropping it, or all the disastrous things that do happen. So that's also part of what to practice outside, I think, after coming off the trainer and indoor cycling.
And just one more step further with that is kind of realize where on your frame your bottle cages are, so that you don't have to look down to put your bottle back in the frame. So if you're riding at home and you're riding, in your time trial position, and you don't have a bottle between your arms, it's on your down tube, At home and your bottle is sitting on a low to your right, look where the bottle is, pick up the bottle and drink it and put it back. Happening in the real world. It's either behind you in your seat, which could take getting used to. Is it on your right side, or is it on your left side behind your seat, or is it on your down tube? You need to do that without looking down. You don't want to be riding, especially an aero, looking down to see how come your bottle is not going into the bottle cage. Getting used to that. It took me a while to get used to finding, the bottle cage behind your seat and trying to get it back there. You got to practice that and get used to it. So you should be doing this at home, and not keeping your bottle next to you on a stool, because when you're out riding, then you are going to be steering with and holding your balance with one hand, and hopefully make that quick transition. The other way to set up your cockpit is if you have your nutrition, your liquid in a bottle between your aero bars, between your forearms, where you're not breaking your positioning at all, and you're just sipping through the straw, which is great. On a long ride, your other bottle is going to be behind you most likely, and you could make adjustments, on the sides. You could just do one bottle back there. Be aware of that. Do you have gels? If people put their gels in a little bag, or your little, energy bars or chews in a little top tube zippered bag, try and do that without looking to where that zipper is, and try and, use your hands and your feel and touch to get your product out, zip it back up so nothing falls out, and then eat it with one hand if you're home on the trainer. So these are all things that we can practice at home that are going to transition to outside safety and being comfortable riding like that. Nutrition is important. One other thing that you mentioned, Danielle, was stopping on your bike. What are you going to unclip with, your left foot or your right foot? To figure that out, anticipate it, and get ready, because you don't want to stop and not unclip. I've done it. I think a lot of people probably have done it. It's not fun, so just anticipate. I always clip out with my right foot. I always clip out with my right first. That's just how I've been doing it. And I think if you keep on practicing one way, your mind and your body knows, okay, I need to get my left, pedal position in this, down on the 6 o'clock position on the left, and then I clip out on the right, and then I'm ready to. Second part of this is not just clipping out, is leaning to the the proper side. If you clip out with your right and you're leaning to the left, you're going to fall over to the left. Be aware for riding, when you're going to stop, and this also comes into play with emergency stopping, and hopefully lean to that side so you could rely on that leg. It sounds pretty basic, but it's something to get used to.
Another thing, when it comes to stopping, a lot of us have, if you have a training set of wheels and, race set of wheels and you're still on rim brakes like me, my training wheels are aluminum and my race wheels are carbon, and the brake surfaces are very different. The braking time is very different. So definitely become familiar, before race day with the way your carbon wheels stop as opposed to your alloy wheels. And then a note on like emergency stopping. If you are in a group or in a race situation and something happens, I wind up just yelling and making noise just to let people know like what I'm doing, but yell slowing or stopping or just anything you can do to make the people around you aware of what your actions are. It's going to help everyone in the race and in the group as well.
Good. Yeah. And also, hopefully now more and more people are going to be doing the group rides as it is safe to do so. So riding, pace line etiquette, riding with, etiquette within the group. If you want to take on nutrition, maybe drop back to the back of the group. Know to pass on the left, maybe drop back to the right. If you need to like blow your nose or cough or sneeze and there's time to do so, maybe drop back to the right, or, don't be sneezing and coughing on anybody if it's safe to do so. So pace line etiquette, it's a little difficult in the aero position. We want to give ourselves some room. If you're going out on the group rides with all the roadies, they don't want, the time trial position. It's the safety thing. We get it. I would ride with a group in Long Island and I would just hang into the back because you're going to get stronger if you do the big group rides with the big, road bike group. You're going to get stronger because they crank, they hit it hard. But stay to the back. Don't be in the middle of, a pace line down in your aero bars because it's not safe. So maybe even, ride in the middle, but just stay on the sides, where you could have more control over your bike. Baseline etiquette, because it is nice to have everyone take, 3 to 4 minute pulls up front, go hard, and then you are going to get from point A to point B faster. Feel nice. You could do your tempo rides that way. You could hit some FTP numbers. It's fun, but you want to be safe when you're doing that. So the baseline etiquette is important. We have a question online from Emma. This might be too complex, but how can I best carry over a time trial fit to a road bike? So maybe Emma has both a road bike and a time trial. Does she have to get fit for her road bike?
I would tell you to get 2 separate fittings, and it's just because there's a lot of things that are different. Not quite as different if you're talking strictly bike time trial versus bike road, but if you're talking, bike triathlon where you have to run off the bike, the fit changes a little bit to kind of help preserve your posterior chain, your glutes, your hamstrings, and your calves for the run. Whereas if you're just doing a time trial on the bike, I would want you to be, utilizing those muscles more than if you're going to run off the bike. Also, the geometries of the frames are completely different. The angle of the seat tube on a triathlon bike is going to be much more closer to like 90 degrees. And on a road bike, it's going to be much more slack over the rear wheel, closer to like, it's typically 73-ish degrees on a road bike, 78-ish degrees on a TT bike. Either way, the geometries are very different. The angle of the knee is a little bit different. Where your knee sits over the pedal spindle is going to be a little different. If you're just using your road bike to cross train outside, you can use it to get in a ballpark. That'll probably work okay for you, and not, you're not going to injure yourself But I would tell you, if you're trying to eke the most performance out of each bike, to get to completely individual bike fits.
Yeah, I would suggest that as well. One thing you can do on the road bike is your stem length might be something worth looking at, because like you said, seat angle is a little bit, I had a road bike. I was too stretched out because my stem, it was a straight stem and it was pretty long. So after my bike fit, I had, the degree was like a 10 degree. And that took me from, I guess, overextended to a little bit more upright. And it just, brought those handlebars in a little bit where I wasn't overextending. So that's just one thing to think about as well, that the stem or your road bike that you get out of the shop might not be the right length for you, right?
No, typically, if there's like one part that's going to change on the bike during the fit, it's going to be the stem. If you leave a bike fit with the stem that you came in with, you're a lucky guy or girl. Because not that stems are crazy expensive, but it's just every 54 road bike is going to come with like a 100 millimeter stem or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And person is not going to fit on that bike with that stem. That's just the way, people aren't made the same.
Perfect. Cool. I think that wraps up the bike portion. We still have, everyone is still with us online. If everyone is good with time, we're going to continue this and we'll go into the special needs and some gear checklists. Is that cool with everyone online? Is that good with Danielle and Chris? You guys good? Cool. All right. So Danielle, let's just go over a gear checklist. We can kind of bang through this. I have a list up here. You want to just tell us what you're telling your athletes, your race day, this is what you should be packing, arrive at your race in the morning.
Sure, of course. Packing happens obviously before race day, so I typically lay everything out by discipline. So you put all of your swim stuff together, which would include, most races will give you a swim cap, but I always put one in there just in case. Maybe I can get in a pre-swim before race day, whether it's the day before, if it's one of those long weekend things, or just to have an extra, just in case. Always have an extra. 2 pairs of goggles, because if you only have one pair, you're going to end up breaking that pair or losing it or something. And then, you need your wetsuit if it's a wetsuit legal.
Do you guys see the checklist that I have up there?
Oh, there it is. Now I see it.
Cool. Yeah, so continue. This is just something to, to reference.
Pretty much just running through the same things, right? I always tell athletes to pack 2 pairs of goggles and an extra swim cap just in case something happens to swim cap, or they drop or lose or break, the elastic on the goggles. You need skin lubricant so that you don't get irritation from your wetsuit on your neck, armpits, and ankles, wrists. It also helps with removal of your wetsuit after the swim. And you can use anything from, they make Body Glide and all different brands, but I mentioned a week or so ago, I throw a can of Pam cooking spray in my bag because it works just the same. And I always have it in case I don't have one of the other, store-bought things. A pair of flip-flops to wear down to from transition to the water start. You'll need those so you don't step on any rocks or glass in parking lots. Sometimes transition areas are parking lot based and could have anything from the night before, glass or rocks and seashells and things like that. I think your timing chip is going to be on your ankle before the swim. So you'll have that. I think that's pretty much it for the swim. I'm not missing anything, right? Bike. So, you have all your swim stuff laid out, then you have all your bike stuff laid out. So you know that you need your bike as one piece of equipment. You need to make sure you have a bike pump, I always tell athletes to carry 2 to 3 tubes for their bike, just in case. I always tend to overpack than underpack. Bike shoes. Some people wear bike socks. I'm not a sock wearer, but people who do wear socks, I would have a pair of socks. For long course, I would have an extra pair of socks, and that would be something I would put in a special needs bag. Have your tire levers, your tool, if you have a bike tool, packed as well. Your nutrition that you carry with you on the bike, whether it's gels or shot blocks, your water bottles filled with your powder nutrition, which turns into your liquid nutrition. I typically throw like an Uncrustable, the prepackaged peanut butter and jelly sandwich in my bike jersey or the back of my kit, whatever I'm wearing. And that's always with me in case you feel that stomach start to turn and you need a bite of something. It's always easy to open while you're on the bike. And shove back in the pocket so you don't litter that. It doesn't really make much of a mess. Helmet, glasses if you don't have a visor on your helmet, bike shoes, socks, tubes, nutrition, your bike. I think that's pretty much it for the bike, right?
Yeah.
Your stickers that are affixed, whatever the race stickers are, and wherever they are supposed to be affixed, typically on the
helmet or on your bike for safety.
On your bike.
Security.
Your helmet as well.
So let's jump into, I guess, T1. Set up T1.
So when you're coming out of the swim and you take off your swim cap and you get your wetsuit off, you'll have your bike stuff set up forefront, I would say, so closest to you. And that's also a preference as to how you put that stuff together, whether your shoes are already on your bike or you put your shoes on before you get on your bike. Everybody develops their own routine with that. Socks, if you're putting socks on after the swim, I don't, for a number of reasons. I don't like the way they feel on my feet, and I also don't want to waste that time putting socks on. So I don't wear them. So I have shoes that are good to go without them. And then your water bottles and everything should be on your bike already.
Yeah, that should be ready to go.
From 5 a.m. when you get, you're not messing with that stuff after the swim. That should be done before you even go to swim. Yeah. And off you go. Off you go. Right. Tires are pumped up. All that stuff is taken care of before we race, right? You agree?
Yes, everything should be taken care of. Try and keep it minimal. We were very, very fortunate to have Ashley Gentle review positions with us last week. She was like super minimal. She, a couple quick tips: put your sunglasses in your helmet, right? Because you don't have to, you have to put your helmet on when you leave transition.
Right.
You want to strap it. You don't necessarily need to put your sunglasses on and make sure that they're, ready to go. So it's like one motion, helmet on, clip, and go. Grab your bike, maybe brush off your feet or something. She has her shoes with rubber bands hooked up to her bike, so she's off and running. She's also done this numerous times, and she's an Olympic athlete. But,
for me, it depends on the race.
It depends on the race, and it's practice. So practice all of those quick transitions. So T2, basically, you're just swapping out your bike shoes for running shoes. You're taking off your helmet. Try not to run out of transition with your helmet on. Maybe
headband or whatever.
Yeah, headband or a visor or a hat. Maybe swap out your sunglasses, because if from the bike, if those are your whatever, are sticky or sweaty or wet, instead of just sitting there and cleaning them, you just want a quick new pair of sunglasses. Keep them in your shoe. Take them out. Sunglasses, hat, race belt. Grab flasks if you're doing flasks or nutrition.
Yeah, usually I'll have like a little Ziploc baggie or something in like my sneaker, and I'll pull that and I'll run with that. So as I'm running out of transition to get on the run, I'm kind of taking my salt tube out of that bag and sticking it in my pocket, or whatever else, stuff like that. So I'm kind of like doing all that as I'm running out of there. But I do
that's great.
those snack bag packets, and I label the bags. I have whatever like extra, and I'll just shove that plastic bag. Sometimes it's chapstick, little things like that I find that I've needed at some point.
Sure.
That I always put together, and what I use, what I don't. It ends up just staying in the pocket, or it gets tossed somewhere.
In the garbage. So I guess with that, with little Ziploc bags, let's just go right into special needs. So now we're going to go to the long course. We only speak of Ironman Lake Placid. It's a 2-loop bike and it's a 2-loop run. After the first loop on the bike, you have a special needs area. You have your special needs bag set up. Stop and grab supplies, or you could just bypass it and go out on your second loop. Same thing with the run. After 13 miles, you have your special needs bag set up. You could stop, grab stuff, whatever you think you might need, or bypass it and go back out. So Danielle, what should you consider when you're filling up your special needs bag, when you're in the hotel room or when you're home, because it's a lot. You got to lay everything out. You have your morning.
Yeah, when you're looking at Ironman, you have so many bags. There's all these plastic bags, and they're laid out all over the place. But the special needs bags are exactly that. They're for your special needs. They're things that, you have to think about what you might want or need halfway through your bike. So if you're talking a 6 to 8 hour bike ride for people, you're thinking like that 3 to 4 hour mark. What could you need by then? You would probably need to refill your nutrition bottles, right? Because you can only carry so much in the beginning of the race. So halfway through, you want to be able to refill those things. So I always put, the tubs of powder already pre-measured, pre-sorted, just to be able to dump into the bottles. Or you may have already powder-filled bottles in your bag and use just the water and swap out your bottles entirely. Again, all things that people try, they practice, they see what works for them. So you want to have your refill of nutrition for like round 2 of the bike is really, really what you're preparing for. If you need to eat some solid food, this is where my base salted boiled potatoes come into play. I make myself a little tiny serving size in a Tupperware that goes in the special needs bag. I boil red potatoes the night before, and I just mash them into like a consistency that you could kind of just swallow. I toss them in base salt, and they go in my little container, and I take just a bite of them. Will help settle like my stomach and be able to absorb some of the fluid that you've already been sucking down for 3 hours prior to. Always throw extra CO2 cartridges in a special needs bag, a tube or two, in case you used one already. You want to replace that when you head out of there. But all of this stuff should happen really quickly. I think we've all had the time or two where you sat too long in special needs, and then you almost you start to go into like recovery, and you really don't feel good. But the quicker you can get that stuff on your person and out the door again is good. But again, some people pack things like gas axe, because they have stomach distress, and they will want that halfway through so that they don't get sick or have really much discomfort the whole way through. So little things, everybody learns or takes notes from someone else. And the same thing for the run. I would, for run bags, which you will be able to retrieve halfway through the run on a marathon course. Some people put the Starbucks, the espresso shots in there, because you can't get those at an aid station. An extra pair of socks. You don't know if it's going to be raining. And your feet could be soaked, and you want to try to prevent blisters. So if you could throw on a pair of dry socks halfway through the run, that's great too. Some people change halfway through. I've seen people in special needs changing things, whether they need to throw on a jacket halfway through either discipline. It gets cold if you're getting into the night hours. Things like that, extra headbands, another hat if they've sweat through something already. But again, all trial and error and preference, and whatever you're putting in those bags, plan that you're not getting them back. Dave, I think Lake Placid gives you your bags back.
Yeah, the day after you can retrieve them.
Some races don't give you your special needs bags back. So anything that you put in there, like if you've got a good pair of socks you're swapping out, consider it gone. That you're never going to.
I mean, a couple times in class it was pouring rain the day after. I think 14 and 17 might have been rain the day after. It's just like, and you forget about it, you know.
You know, and I've put things like Listerine spray in there. I mean, I've, you know, prepared for everything and sometimes don't even touch any of it. But at least you know mentally that it's there. If you need it, it's going to be there at mile 56, 58, 60, depending on which race it is. But you eventually get to kind of recharge for a second. I think I lost you.
Uh-oh. He's gone.
Oh, he's going to dial back in.
Okay.
Do you have anything you want to add to that?
I would actually have a question as, you know, a not super experienced triathlete, but a pretty experienced cyclist coming into triathlon or looking to maybe get into triathlon. Do you find that your nutrition that you would be taking in on the bike is the same as you would be taking it on the run, or do you have stuff that works for you on the bike that doesn't work on the run, or like what?
Yeah. Everything for triathlon, I would say, fuels you for your run. So your bike nutrition and the timing of your bike nutrition is super important for the run. Your bike is going to get you through the run. So everything you do in those hours leading up to the run is what's going to carry you through it. Yes, there's things like every mile you want to try to replace the salt and some electrolytes, a little bit of water, some fluids and things like that. But in terms of, nutrition, if you're coming from, you know, just straight cycling and going into triathlon, you want to use your cycle nutrition to fuel your run.
I would have never thought of it that way. That's a really good tip.
Yeah, sorry guys.
Chris had asked, he said,
for a second.
Somebody who's a cyclist, straight cyclist, and wants to get into triathlon, what do you say about like nutrition going from the bike to the run? Is it the same as on the bike, on the run, or whatever? So I had just responded briefly that your bike nutrition really kind of fuels you for the run.
Yeah, certainly. Two quick things there. We had a nutrition discussion last week. You probably should have two different, nutrition formulas, a little less protein for the run, because you don't want that fullness. So you are running off of what you consume on the bike. And then another thing, quick takeaway is, if you are scheduled to like finish your bottle by the end of your bike and you didn't, think of a plan B, because if you just down everything in your bottle just to finish it because you know that you should have it empty by the time you finish your bike, you're going to pay for it on the first couple of miles on the run, because all that liquid is now going to be sloshing in your stomach. It's better to just slowly reintroduce that once you get out on the run course, rather than, I have this much left of the, half a bottle left. I know that my nutrition needs to be, on point, and I need to finish this bottle by the time I get off the bike. Then you down this bottle and it's like, it's going to hurt you on the run. So with that said, I think we hit a lot of good topics with the special needs bags. One other thing, I'd like to carry like a damp or a wet washcloth in the special needs bag. Put it in a Ziploc bag, come in, wipe the salt off your face, or just wipe the sweat off your face, wipe your arms, your legs, and you just feel fresh.
A little fresh. Baby wipes will do that too. Yeah.
The baby wipes, yeah. But if you're in the hotel, use those handy, the hand towels, wet them, put them in a Ziploc bag. Ziploc bags are your friends in Ironman and special needs. So I think with that, we covered so much tonight. The time kind of flew right by. Let me just make sure we have no more questions here. What do we got? No more questions. Come. I said I would do this, but we got Maggie here. Maggie was so good tonight.
The
She was
multi-poo.
quiet the whole night. You had no idea that she was sitting next to me. She didn't bark at all. So good girl, Maggie. Thank you. We thank everyone for joining us tonight. Thanks, Chris. It was great to connect with you. You know, you offered some great insight to, the bike maintenance and the bike fit important aspects of things. Thank you so much for joining us. I'll email everyone a copy of this video and give everyone Chris's contact information. Danielle, thank you so much again for, co-moderating this with me. Couldn't have done this without you. Thank you so much. We're wrapping for the week. We're back next week for our final week. Monday is going to be mental preparedness with Liv Massey. She's a mental health coach. She's going to discuss race day jitters, the mindset of the endurance athlete, preparing for big races, right before you hop into that water, what is going through your mind, because everyone gets a little high anxiety before we all jump in the water on race day. So Liv is going to join us for that. And then on Wednesday, the 24th, we have Miranda Carfrey is going to join us for our grand finale. Yes. So she is going to be joining us via video to discuss her training, how she's been adapting her training over the past few months with no racing, how she's been modifying things. So we'll be joined by her and Jake Deering, who's the director of sports marketing over at Felt Bicycles. It's going to be a very special event. I'll send everyone the information on that. It's on our website as well. So we're very fortunate to have Josh Amberger here 2 weeks ago, and then Ashley Gentle here last week, and now next week's going to be Miranda Carfrey. So we invite everyone back to join us. Any final thoughts? Danielle, Chris, anything in closing?
I think this is great. Yeah, we could talk forever about bikes. It's like,
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, we are bike heavy with this, but I mean, I kind of think everyone can swim and run. Bikes, it's like your machine, So
it is. You spend the most time on it.
There's a lot. I mean, there's so many different aspects in triathlon to get into. But thank you so much for the conversation tonight. Super helpful. We hope that everyone out there found it helpful. And have a good night, and we'll see you all next week.
See you next week. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, David.
Thank you.